Bailey, and this is Floral Art Review. And this week we are looking at a design that was judged all around. So the plinth that it's standing on is a supplied plinth. It was 60 centimetres square, and the space we were allowed, as I said, was a metre square, and so we could go outside of the confines of the plinth and up or down and up a metre. So what I've done here is I've decided to go up and a little bit out from the sides of the plinth itself. And I do that for a particular reason. When a design's being judged all around, I like to think of it as a journey. So the judge is going to come in and walk around the design. So when I'm preparing the design at home, I won't put it on a lazy Susan, which is my practice when I'm doing demonstrations or when I'm putting designs together for the bench, is that I'll put it on a lazy Susan so I can spin it around and I can see what it looks like, and then I can turn it around and finish off the back and all those sorts of things. But for a design that is going to be judged all around or seen all around, then I much prefer to be able to walk around it myself. So I have a stool with a plate, a metal plate that I put on top that is the space allocation, and I will walk around the design to see it. The other thing I like to do with these, because it's on the plinth and it's not on the bench necessarily, is I don't want to have a design where the judges are looking down into the design when it's an all-around design. I want them to walk around and experience the design. So for these types of designs, I will often put the bulk of my design at eye level. And so you can see here that I've used a metal stand, which is a very rigid stand. It's very clearly vertical lines, metal stand. And the bulk of the design, the plant material part of the design, is at the top of that stand. And I've used some palm end fluorescence. And I've tatamied those together so that I can get a spiral or twisted shape out of them, so the contorted and controlled part of my interpretation. There's some roses because this was a day where we had to use roses in the design. And as you know, I'm not a big fan of using roses. I just don't feel that they lend themselves to my style of designing. They certainly might to yours, but for me, the way I design, they don't work as well as some other plant material. I've used some Xanadu leaves because I can manipulate those. I can shape those a little bit. I've got a little bit of gymea leaf that I've twisted that's hanging down from the top to connect to the bottom part of the design. In the bottom and in the top, I've got some Westringia, which is an Australian native, but it's just got a nice sort of twisted, I guess is the best way, look to it, and it works well in terms of transition with that and the coconut fibre that I've used there as well. And I've made some rings out of twisted willow that are hanging down from the top of the design to connect to the base part of the design. And I've got another rose that's coming out from the base that's heading up towards the top of the design. And in some angles you can see it, and in some angles you can't. And as I look at it now, I think it's just a little bit out of place. I can't really work out what I was thinking of when I put it there, other than I needed that connection between, there is a red rose in the top, which you can't see at every angle. It's worrying me now. Yeah, as you know, whenever we go through these designs, there's always something in it that niggles at the back of my head while I'm going through the analysis. So let's put that to one side, and we'll go and see what Design Eye has got to see, our AI, and see what the principles and elements of design were addressed in this design and how I could improve it. Looking at line, first of all, the dominant element is the intricate curved line created by the contorted branches. These lines create a sense of frantic movement that is controlled by the vertical iron structure. So there it's talking about the palm end fluorescence, because it's twisted around the whole of the design. So everywhere, every angle you look, all the way walking around it, you can see this part of the design that is twisted around in the design. So it's contorted around the design. My feeling was that it was controlled by the technique that I used to put it together, the tatami technique. The AI analysis saying that it is controlled by the verticality and the strength of that metal stand that it is wrapped around. So 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, but it still meets the class title. Space. Excellent use of negative space. By elevating the main floral mass, you've created a window in the centre of the design, which is essential for an all-around placement to ensure it doesn't feel like a heavy solid block from every angle. Now, that's one of the things that you could imagine. If you put yourself in the place of the judge and you've got a design that's presented to you and you're looking sort of down at it, or it's sort of halfway up in your viewing platform so you can look down but you can see the sides of it as well. You walk around it and it is just this mass of plant material. It's really going to feel like it is condensed and there's no breathing space and there's no lightness or airiness in the design. So by elevating that top design or part of the design, what I've given the judges is an opportunity for them to have a leisurely move around the design and to use that negative space to bring the two parts together to make it a whole design, but it just feels like it's more controlled as a design and more contained as a design with that space in it. Texture. A rich contrast between the rough, hairy texture of the coconut fibre and the spiked linear branches and the velvet smooth petals of the roses. So I think that there is quite a good range of textures in this design. There's nothing particularly shiny, but we've got some smooth and some rough, and we've got some dull, and we've got some that are pops of colour, and so we might consider that they're bright in terms of contrast. But the textural side of it is well covered between all the different elements that are in the design. So it's not just about foliage having different textures of the flowers themselves, and the foliage are different in terms of their texture too. Lost my train of thought for a minute there. Let's move on to form. This is a structural form design. The placement relies on the strength of the metal stand and the woven branch canopy to define its silhouette. That's very true, in that what it gives us is the shape of the design. So it's this we've got the very solid spine to the design, and then we've got some things that are moving around outside of the design, so we have that silhouette. It's interesting that the form and the line in this particular design are so very much aligned and similar in terms of meeting the requirements of the class title. Balance. Achieving balance in an all-round design is difficult. You have used asymmetrical balance. The visual weight of the large philodendron leaf and the dense floral cluster at the top is countered by the sprawling branch base and the low single positioned red rose. There is balance there. You can see that there is visual balance there, and what is that helped that balance is having the space in between. Because if we condensed it down, it would just look top heavy. And so it's getting those proportions of that space to the density and the size of the design, the two parts of the design, is what I've managed to achieve by giving it that asymmetrical balance. Contrast. The juxtaposition of the natural wild contorted stems against the rigid man-made verticality of the black metal stand perfectly interprets the title Contorted Control. So it's interesting that it's the contrast of the placements that has helped interpret the design. I know that's the case. I can see that that's the case. It's just that I, as you would expect, keep going back to the fact that my interpretation that I wanted to highlight was the inflorescence that I have to time it together at the top of that. That was my main interpretation, was that here were these oddly shaped bits of plant material that I controlled by joining them together with wire, and then I had contorted them even further by twisting them into that spiral shape. Doesn't matter, I guess, how it met the class title, it still did. I just think that having contrast in terms of the stand and the structure and the plant material is an interesting development in terms of my floral art journey, because I would always look at contrast being in colour or in texture or in line, perhaps sometimes, mostly texture, as you know. And so this is a good learning thing for me to see that I can achieve contrast by the actual elements physically that I use in a design rather than just relying on texture or colour alone. Unity. The repetition of red and white roses at both the top and the bottom levels ties the two distinct sections together, ensuring the eye travels through the entire vertical space. Now, this is something that I have talked to you about before. It's about keeping colour or repeating a particular part of your design throughout the whole of the design, so that our eyes, our brain, the message gets through that this is all part of one design. It's not that there's this colour and this information up here and the rest of it is just sort of just there kind of supporting it. So if you imagine this design, if I hadn't put the roses in the base design, it would look like two designs. It would look like, here's this top design that's got all this lovely stuff in it, and then there's this bottom bit here which just sort of fills out the base. I need something to tie the two together visually and in some cases physically as well. But in this case, the two distinct sections are tied together, are unified by the fact that I have repeated those rose placements in the top and the bottom parts of the design. So rhythm now. The spiralling movement of the branches creates a rhythmic flow that leads the viewer's eye around the design, satisfying the judged all-round requirement. And that was very much a part of why I wanted that placement, because it is large and I knew it had the potential to be dominating in the design, but I wanted it to provide the rhythm of the design by making the judges be able to see it all the way when they walked all the way around the design. So it needed that one thing that was unifying across the whole of the design, that was about the class title, regardless of whatever else I put in it, that one placement is Contorted Control, and you can see it from every angle. It's not the same from every angle, but you can see it from every angle. So let's now have a look at some of the suggestions that our designer has got for me to improve this design. As you can see, it placed third, and I think at the time I was pretty happy with it. I'm always happy with anything I get when I've had to use roses. So that was a good result for me in terms of roses being part of this design. The first one is the middle gap. While the negative space is a strength, the transition between the top mass and the base feels a little sparse in the centre. A very fine thin vine or a trailing element, like a single long strand of grass or wire, could subtly bridge the gap to enhance the vertical rhythm. I think that's a very good observation. I do have one piece of the Gymea leaf that I have curled around, and that drapes or hangs down from the top design, and I think I had hoped that that would help the eye travel through and join that middle gap there. And I've got the rings that I made out of the tortured willow that do the same thing, that hang from the bottom hang from the top rather towards the bottom. But there isn't anything that, you can't see them from every angle, and so there isn't anything that joins the design from every angle you view it, and so that's certainly something that I'd have to look at improving. Colour distribution. The single red rose in the lower section is a fantastic focal point. It feels a bit lonely. Adding a tiny echo of that red, perhaps a few red berries or a smaller red bud tucked into the base, would strengthen the colour harmony. And that's very true. I've got just the single white and the single red in that bottom part of the design, and it needs something. It doesn't need something more. It certainly needs at least another red colour, probably down in the base itself. So where the white one is, on the other side of that or beside that, and then the red one that's there now wouldn't appear to be just out on its own and be lonely. We can't have them being lonely. So once again, another good suggestion that I will certainly try. The all-around front. In all-around designs, judges look for a 360-degree finish, ensure that the mechanics, floral foam or water vials, are completely obscured by the foliage from every possible viewing angle. especially where the branches meet the metal plate. So that's my hint, is that in one of these images, the AI can obviously see that there is mechanics inside that metal plate at the top of the stand, and that mechanic is supporting the material that is the top of the stand there. And so this is another reason why it is good to take photos of your designs, because taking a photo, which is saying photos never lie. So we need to have a second set of eyes look at our design and show us what an independent person is seeing, because you've worked on this design for all of the planning stages, you've worked on putting it together, you will not see things. You will fill in the gaps of things that you know should be there, or you think are there, or your eye just glazes over that part because you're focused on somewhere else. So take the photos before judging, have a look at the photos, and then go back and adjust your design for the gaps or the mechanics that you've left behind or that can be seen from every angle. All good suggestions, all ones that I would certainly think about and put in the filing cabinet in my head to ensure that I look at next time I do an all-around judged design. So that's our analysis for this week on the design Contorted Control. Join me again next time for another of my designs. For now, I'm Kim Bailey and this is Floral Art Review.